So we're going to talk to Relic in Texas, who's talking about the dissipation of religion and rise of spirituality. What would you like to talk to us about on those topics?
Hello, both of y'all. Thank you for taking my
Hi.
call. Can I make one respectful comment about Casey's call?
Yeah,
Sure.
go for it.
Eratosthenes in 500 BC. And to read more secular history books. But other than that, yes, the dissipation of organized religion and the rise of spirituality. I had this thought pop into my head, and this is more of a thought and idea that I've had and I've seen happen, and I just wanted your take on it, if that's okay.
Sure.
Go for it.
Okay, so I've noticed that, like, people's beliefs, we used to have more hard organized religions, and as time has gone on, you realize that people don't really read the books or try to communicate the books that they're supposedly talking about. Like, they ignore quotes, they cherry pick, and they sort of come up with their own version of their own religion. And I've kind of come to terms with, like, have you ever read anything on how speech works, how human communication works, like how our languages have evolved over time?
I've read some stuff, but perhaps whatever point you want to make it for the audience, because
I read
I'm
more
sure lots of people
philosophy
here
of
wouldn't
language than like that specifically. But
okay, well, typically, as languages evolve, they sort of soften and become more efficient over time, like throwing off the baggage of, let's say, it's too many letters or too many consonants, too many syllables, and they get down to a very efficient, lean version of the original word. And as I've seen just throughout my life, and that's perfectly okay, and I'm okay with being wrong with this, but the idea of people's religion being softened down and made more efficient towards their viewpoint of the world.
Yeah, I mean, that could be the case, but I don't know that it'd be fair to generalize that. I mean, there are people that take their religion as seriously as and unbiasedly as I guess they can. There are people out there, people that, and a lot of those people have come out of religion for those reasons. But I was somebody on a different perspective because I read the Bible, I read the Quran, and I was just like, yeah, I don't believe any of this. And then I had this really weird, like, vacuous notion of spirituality that it's kind of what you're saying. I kind of just morphed it around what I preferred. And so I was susceptible to a lot of conspiracy theories and things of that nature. And so I get that point. I think that really comes down to, for me, it's more about, like, people want to feel like they have the answers to the universe and the world around them. I know spiritualism stands in as this kind of vapid or this kind of form of religion without all the, extra baggage, going to church or, the maybe things that they want to partake in that they can't or something. So it seems to me like the only thing that's really common theme in all that to me is the fact that, like, people don't seem interested in the independent evidence in general. They seem more interested on what fits their biases or preconceived notions to begin with. So I don't know that that's different in really any case. It seems to be kind of people want to understand the world around them, and they're willing to favor those comforting beliefs over breaking down how they actually know things in the first place. So I don't know if that gives a perspective at all, but it seems to me to go deeper than that, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I can understand one kind of angle on this is looking at religions and ideas and languages also undergo some kind of evolutionary pressure. I mean, evolution is just kind of maths in action, really. If something works better in certain conditions, then it's more likely to, carry on working in those conditions. So when it comes to reproduction, if the pressures in your environment change and you happen to now be more specialized for that, you'll be more likely to reproduce and pass on. And it's the same with ideas. Ideas kind of reproduce and are passed on, like languages are. I mean, I guess languages are ideas in a sense. And when the environmental pressures change, then the ideas that fit better will survive. And I guess, as a long time ago, when we knew less about the world and there was less communication and you were less likely to encounter people with different views, having some strong religious belief where you just believed everything that you got in the Bible or whatever book would be much easier to hold up, because there wasn't lots of conflicting information, and you'd be able to pass it on. But then, as the environment has changed and we've got loads of information that starts conflicting with the Bible, like our understanding of philosophy and logic, and then also just evidence which clashes with it, and then we start encountering people from other religions and atheists and stuff just all the time. If you have a slightly morphed version of a religious view, not literally what it says in the Bible, but slightly different, and I think like a good example would be, as social attitudes change. If the Bible says being gay is wrong, and then society changes so everyone thinks being gay is fine, which is good, that it has, then either your religion is going to be constantly up against the social pressure of every single person around you thinking you're wrong, or you could just change your religion a bit and just kind of drop that belief from it. And I guess you could describe that as becoming watered down or softer, or however you like to say it.
Well,
I mean, that kind of implies there's some kind of direction to this, which maybe isn't the best way. But I mean, religions change over time, and any idea and any belief system that groups of people have do, because attitudes change, and ones that fit in better with the world that we see and the attitudes that people have would be the ones that are more likely to be passed on, because more people are going to want to believe them. I mean,
well, and to attach just real fast, sorry, Relic, to cut you off before you can come in, but I just want to say real fast, because Katy made me think of this. This is exactly kind of the last call. Use the verses about homosexuality. You could just make that move with the societal pressure to go, well, actually, we just had the wrong interpretation, which goes back to like the text. It's all there, but you just morph what's already there into what's preferable. And the problem with that, what I wanted to say, Relic, is that if you're coming into it as I don't know if it said you're looking at the call screen right now, but if you're a theist or you believe in this, or someone makes this claim and they believe in this, you're still on a par with them seemingly changing the meaning. Because from my perspective as a non-believer, this just doesn't seem that either one of you has actually shown the way I interpret this verse is in line with what God meant. So when someone says that person has like a watered down version of it, that begs the question against their view, because the other person can just say the same thing to them, because it's all going to come down to how you just interpret what you think God meant by it. And if there's nothing that actually stands as evidence to put one theory above the other theory, they're just on an epistemic par, right? There's just nothing that you could say that's better on one than the other. And so I'm worried you coming into it, if you had that impression that they're wrong about it, my question would be, okay, give me the independent evidence so that I know you're right with the right interpretation, right? And then that way I don't have to worry about the watered down versions. I can get on board with what the real religion is. That's my life is being, dangled for eternity over. So
I think it's quite tempting to see things as becoming watered down, because it's often presented as like, traditional versus progressive, and in your lifetime you see things change away from the tradition, and then they'll say, oh, things are being watered down and changed, and that's kind of like the narrative around belief and society and religion and stuff. But then I think that's much easier to do when you're looking at on your kind of lifetime scale, and just filtering it through your own understanding of the world, like what Mike was just saying, your own interpretation of things. And it's just a watered down kind of implies this direction. It's a bit like when people say, oh, humans are the most highly evolved animals. And that's just not true, because there's not really a sense of highly and lowly or whatever the opposite is, evolved animals. It's
Mhm.
just that we are like the most intelligent that we know, and that doesn't make us the most evolved, because I mean, what does that even mean? It's just we have evolved. We've all evolved for like the same amount of time or whatever. um and it's the same with watered down religions. I mean, maybe this, religion has now changed from how it was 50 years ago in America, and lots of people are saying, oh, the Bible verse doesn't actually say that being gay is bad, so actually being gay is good. And then that'll become like the new normal and the new tradition. And then maybe in 100 years it'll flip over and
Uh-huh.
social attitudes
Yeah.
will get worse again. They'll be like, you're watering down what the Bible says. And it's just really, they just mean it's changing from my tradition.
Right. Just to clarify it, because that direction doesn't exist for me. I'm not a Christian, or that I would more, I guess, is spiritual humanist, or I use well-being as my foundation and use science as sort of a backbone to counteract my spiritual beliefs, to make sure I'm not in conflict with science or any sort of, how can I put it, any sort of harm being done to someone. To me, well-being is the center, and I marry that with my spiritual beliefs. I'm more on the lines of a pagan. But what I'm talking about, I think it's a good thing that over time religions they should conform to societal pressures. When those societal pressures are indicating that there is something inherently wrong with the scripture or inherently wrong with the core beliefs of a said religion, it should reevaluate itself and update itself. Now, the reason I talk about this is because I think it's a very fascinating evolution. If you look at how Christianity starts out, or how Islam starts out, or all these things, they have become something completely different from when they started. And to me, that journey is very telling about the human experience, because humans over time tend to want to be good, tend to want to do better. And there is a pitfall that everybody goes for, which is that search and that seizing of absolute truth, which is just impossible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it gives you a system of belief. It doesn't give you a system of knowledge, which anybody can build a system of belief around anything.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a couple. Or go ahead, Katie. Sorry if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I agree with you in the sense that it's good that religions change, in the sense that, social attitudes are able to evolve and we can get better as a society. And if religion doesn't change and it becomes a roadblock for that, I mean, it is already a roadblock for that, because religion seems more resistant to change than non-religion. I don't know, or to secular understandings of the world, I guess.
Yeah.
And so in that sense it's good, but then it's also kind of bad in that if we didn't have religion there at all, then it wouldn't be this thing in the way for progress. And if religions didn't change, then it would be more obvious they were wrong. I mean, the fact that they do change is kind of, for any of the religions that claim, our God is totally right all the time and we know everything, and then we say, well, your religion's totally different now, that itself is evidence that their religion is wrong, and hopefully would show people that it's rubbish.
You hit the exact point that I was going to say, which is that because Relic saying it's indicative of like the human experience, and maybe like I'm not going to take away from that, but I'll give you what I interpret it is that it's it kind of is more indicative of the fact that this omnibenevolent or all-powerful, never-changing, perfect God, how it changes a lot all of a sudden, which is like, I don't really know what could be more of like, hey, this God can't exist if it was never changing, but seemingly the humans are changing it, because now the thing they believe in is clearly some made-up thing that just morphed itself, kind of emerged into reality from some prior thing that had its own issues. But, now it's like, now this new thing kind of emerges through that. It's like, well, I can just know that's contradictory towards what the original claim was.
Right.
And so, it seems like that's telling to me about religion. No, you're good. Go ahead.
And I want to say that, like, first of all, I'm with the utmost respect. I think when you get to that point to where you're like, if religion would just step out of the way, that's ultimately unrealistic. I'm not saying that people are right for every spiritual belief that they hold, but there is a benefit to spiritual practices in general, like meditation, or even therapy can be spiritual if you think about it. It's not a supernatural nebulous term. It's, in my opinion, it's more about this is making a better society. And people have each a different way of interpreting their own reality, whether for right or wrong. And me, I personally try to use science to the best of my ability to understand the world around me, as anybody should. But there are some people whose brains don't work that way, and they latch on to the things that come around them. And as a society, it should be embraced when a religion or some doctrine gets changed for the betterment of humankind. And yes, like I said, it's spiritual, and I do believe there is something. And there are some people that hold these spiritual beliefs that don't have a one God or a one being, and they use their belief system to try to be better humans. Does that make sense? I'm not trying to come off.
It completely makes sense. Because there's something to be said that there's part of people in a conversation that not many theists or atheists know about. There are, and I'm sympathetic to the view, though I'm a skeptic, so it's hard for me to really align on specific positions a lot of times. But you could be a non-naturalist, right? Most people are going to think there's this dichotomy of like naturalism and, you know, supernaturalism or some spiritual theist thing. But there are people that take reduction of say values in the world that it doesn't actually reduce to like physical states of affairs or like natural facts. And so they're just going to basically say like there's this kind of other option out there of value properties in the world. But for me, even on like I've talked to people who have that position, I'm sympathetic to certain arguments about it, but I'm never like, you know, that should entail some spiritual thing. To me, that's just as like there's something potentially not detectable by science, or eventually it is, and it could be something like because values is something very contentious to, or at least a lot of people in philosophy are going to have issues saying science can discover values. Really, it concerns itself with facts. And if that's bridged, then maybe this just goes into a naturalist account. But the idea being that I don't know that, you know, it makes much sense to just, when we reduce all the things that you say about like, you know, people doing these good things, to me that'll reduce to the natural facts. Right now, the argument's left for someone to say there's value properties out there, and that's not part of the natural world. But it does seem to me that like everything's going to potentially reduce to the natural facts, in terms of what you're saying, right? These are things that can exist in just a world of like just naturalism, right? With absent the spiritual stuff. Now, if you were to say, well, I think like there's value properties that science can't detect or something, then yeah, I guess I'd get that. I don't know how you would substantiate the claim, but it does seem like there's many options you can take without having kind of the religious baggage. I'm just worried about how we actually detect those things, right? Because then it kind of gets into like dualism or idealism or like mental properties, where it's like I don't know how we even know. Yeah, I don't know how we actually know that that's a feature of the world, if that person's not willing to offer up some method of detecting what it is they claim exists. And if they say it's like, you know, absent science or something, then that's even worse, because it's like, well, now look, I'm building a house with a hammer, and you're telling me like there's other tools to use. It's like, well, you can't even take me to Lowe's, you know, and show me which tool you're using to detect these things. So exactly. I leave it open. I don't know that it doesn't, long-winded to say, I don't know that it doesn't just reduce to the natural facts. And if it does, someone's gonna have to provide an argument or evidence for.
Exactly. And I 100% agree. My whole thing is like, yes, I do believe there is some value that is beyond just like, you know, human speculation. But I will say that like, as a whole, it is unrelated and not important in the grand scheme of humanity to move forward. I don't believe there is some sort of like determination to I don't know, to hold to some sort of cosmic objective values that science can't detect. It should be based on the best science that we have at the time, and to improve and to update our morals as we go throughout the universe and discover more about our place in it.
Yeah, well, let me ask you just a question before we kind of we move on. Do you sounds like it's the case. Or you might have said it bluntly, and I just didn't pick it up. You would say that like science can be in the realm of values and not just facts. Like you would hold that.
I would hold that science should be used as a check for values. I believe that I believe that values can be secular. I believe that values can be discovered by human beings, and they can be backed by science. Science is like a bunch of statements of fact, and it is the core of our understanding of the universe and the world around us. Like, how does a tree work? Like, all these sorts of things. What is chlorophyll? Like, we understand that, but like, for instance, right now, it's just a very recent thing. Are y'all familiar with the new Kent Hovind lawsuit?
I can't keep up, to be honest, but
summarize it.
Well, real fast, because I don't want to get off on a tangent.
Yeah, okay.
If that's okay, real fast.
Of course.
The reason why I asked this is because if you agree, if you think science can detect values and stuff like that, and science exhausts the natural world, I don't know what place it is for you to call it spiritualism. Sounds like you're just using a label potentially that might not fit, right? Because if in this worldview that you detect, I'm skeptical that science detects values, which is why I take different positions on morality. I think it could, maybe. Right. I don't think we're there. But if you are someone that goes, yeah, values can be detected by science, not just facts, right? We can get ought statements or is statements. Then I don't know like what business the spiritual part's really doing, right? Because it seems like you've kind of have an encompassed worldview with facts and values. And those values are kind of subsumed in the natural world. You know what I mean?
What bit of it's spiritual?
Yeah.
Okay, so the spiritual side of my beliefs, if you're okay with me going into that really quickly, is that I've communicated with what I believe to be spirits. And this is where this level, but like, okay, I am fully open to the idea that these spirits are some sort of manifestation of my mind, and aiding me in my betterment. For instance, just using a healthy dose of introspection to look at yourself and the way that you interact with the world. Yes, I do think science, eventually everything I do believe science can end up detecting. It just takes an amount of time and the amount of effort, and through the years, eventually things are going to be known. There's going to be things that we'll never know, but things will unveil itself to us as time goes on in our exploration of everything. I believe the spiritual part is in the deep introspection into each individual person. For instance, just like if you're doing tarot reading looks very esoteric and ridiculous, but if you look at the meaning of each card and you use it to identify something that you actually do partake in for yourself, and you realize that, hey, I do that, and is that thing necessarily good or necessarily bad? I think having that brought up to you can, in some form or fashion, start a process of betterment.
Doesn't that have like weighted dice though pretty quickly if like it's just very vague things that happen to everybody on those cards, right? Not very specific things, and then also it's like
star signs.
Keep track of that. The spiritual thing is like I don't say it's my wheelhouse, but it's the thing I think I combat the most in my spare time. That this is something I always, when I talk with people in this, count your misses and not just the things that apply, because you're going to see the success rates exactly like chance. It's going to literally be identical to chance.
And that's fine.
That wouldn't be a good thing, because this would go back to like the theme of a lot of the calls today. you have an underdetermined theory, like your theory, if your theory is undermined by chance, I think that's as bad as a theory can get. Like if I like prayer or faith or spiritualism, if I can just put chance as this control, and then we can conclude that chance, this looks a lot like chance and not this other entity that we're describing. It fits exactly like with the properties of what chance would be, you know, then that's for me. Then I'm like, okay, I'm confident in not believing in this thing, you know, for me though. That's according to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
But there was, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay, and I am sorry for interrupting. It's I think it's a little bit delay on my part.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
I fully agree that spirituality should not be like that. The spirituality is the term I have for it right now, and maybe that's just me growing as a human being, and I'm learning to get the terms together. But by spiritual, I don't mean necessarily in a core beliefs in which I take only these things to be true, or these chance counters. Like you said, count your misses as much as your hits. But when something hits and you think about it, and you're like, I do that, that brings something to your attention that you wouldn't necessarily normally think about. Some people might want to seek those things out, but not everybody does.
Sure, but Relic, if I had told you like something about you and I hit right, but I missed like 10,000 times.
Be a long show.
Yeah. If I had missed like so many times, but I hit once, I don't know that like it's good. It's reasonable for me to go like there's something to Jmike being like clairvoyant because he got it once.
Right, and I fully agree 100%. That's not necessarily what I'm talking about, and maybe it's my poor explanation.
I think it is the same because the things you were describing, it could have improved your life, and it could have been something you wouldn't have thought about otherwise. Jmike said 100 things about your life, and only one of them is right. It kind of fits all the same things as the tarot cards, doesn't it? I mean, it's rather than doing tarot cards, you've just talked to Jmike, the revealer of truth, or whatever. I mean, what's the difference here?
Right. So if I were to just say, for instance, let's walk this back like 5 seconds. Do y'all believe that there is an inherent value to deep meditation?
No, I don't. I deny inherent values and things. I'm open to
inherent
it, like
value,
I
then
said,
there is a value to it.
Yeah, I am
for
not,
some people,
I don't know that there are external value properties. I think there's just perceived internal ones. So like, it's gonna be weird.
It's just subjective value.
Yeah, exactly.
Because okay, so the internal is the point I'm getting at. The spiritual side of things is more dealing with the internal, dealing with you inside, not external. When things start becoming external, that's when it becomes a problem, and it starts going around and messing with other people's daily lives. Internalizing or just working in on yourself. Do y'all know who Carl Jung is and like his concept of the shadow?
His name sounds really familiar.
He was a psychologist, he's a bit of a mystic, but
that's where it sounded familiar.
Has done a lot of things too. Yeah, he does a lot. He helped psychology a heck of a lot. He's written a lot of books that have been used in modern psychology. Some of his ideas, but he also believed in a lot of external, like wild things, like for instance, synchronicity and all that sort of stuff. But his concept of the concept of the Jungian shadow of like there is a part of yourself that is all of your worst attributes, and if you look down and you can recognize those attributes, incorporate them in your daily life, or file down the edges and try to make this shadow into the self. And the concept of the self was your best possible version.
That's so for me.
I'm
that's
a bit lost.
Well, for me, I'm already like
I
have issues. No, well, look, for me, it's an issue of using, and I'm trying my best today to not invoke some like esoteric language, but when you say best, it's goal oriented. That is to say, it's normative. It holds to some evaluative standard, and when my whole thing that I'm questioning is these properties of value in general. When someone invokes terms like better or best, that just assumes the value that I'm skeptical of, right? So it wouldn't do anything.
I understand.
You see, because it would be, it's like it's the equivalent of like using the word in your definition, right? It doesn't like really like reify anything to me, because I'm going, yeah, but best is is part of the value that's in contention, right? So like when someone would use that term, I don't know that it really defines anything further. It just seems to be saying the same exact statement. But but yeah, I'd have to look into that. I pulled up the Wikipedia, so I'll give that a read. So that'll be interesting. I appreciate the the potential deep dive I'll go into for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's very.
There's this one other thing that I wanted to mention just earlier when you were saying, what is spiritual about your views, and you said that you believed you would talk to spirits. I was just wondering, like, I guess spirits is kind of a word that can be like, I don't know, what spirits and spirituality seem like they aren't necessarily the same things. I don't know if someone said, I consider my belief spiritual because I've seen ghosts. I don't know if that would follow. Is that what you meant there?
No. Me, like I said, I'm more along the lines of a pagan. I do dabble in druidry and shamanism. I follow that spiritual path. And
I'm not. Yeah, but so that could just be like they could just be actions in that, I like my traditions, like I eat Christmas dinner, and it's just some tradition that my family does, and we could say it's like a Christian tradition, but that doesn't mean that I'm practicing like Christianity. That doesn't make me a Christian. You could be doing druidy stuff or shamanistic stuff, whatever those things are, just for the fun of it or the tradition or something. And then you say like that path of spirituality. I mean, that's kind of then using the word again in its definition. I mean,
well, yeah,
if to you spiritual just means doing like these things that people often call, like, and when people say, oh, I'm spiritual, it's like, oh, I like crystals and I like tarot cards and stuff. Like, that's cool, but that's not really a claim about like spirituality or spirits or some kind of other thing that's not in the a material world or whatever.
Manifestation.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
Do you feel like spiritual, when you say you're spiritual, do you feel like you're just saying it to describe all these kind of like activities that people kind of, like magic and like I like to do witch stuff, and or do you actually mean spiritual as in some kind of claim about the supernatural?
Okay, so I use it in both two ways. One is when I'm talking about spiritual like activities, like I'm talking like deep meditation. Sure, I guess crystals could fall into that, but that's not really my bag. Tarot reading, rune reading, like stuff that's required for deep personal introspection, or number two, spiritual as in the sake.
I don't think it's required for personal introspection. It might be how you do it, but I can assure you that I do deep personal introspection to a distressing degree all of the time without doing any of those things.
Yeah, I was going to say the same, and then I don't know what's the.
Well, if it's just introspection is spiritual, if we define whatever introspection is as spiritual, then I'm spiritual, and probably so is everyone else, and then it's common meaning.
Yeah, it's just a semantic battle, because it's like I'm saying naturalism and you're saying naturalism. What's the spiritual thing or something? It's like
Yeah, I'm not. Okay, I'm not trying to talk past y'all or anything. I'm trying to be answered to the best of my ability.
No, I know.
It's not really a semantic thing. It's more along the lines of, okay, it's like, what would someone call going to a rock concert and listening to their favorite song? That feeling of like awe that comes over you? Most people would call that spiritual. Like if you're in,
I wouldn't know.
Like, listening to the hymns and everything, and you're getting into the community spirit, and you're feeling something, and you get this sense of euphoria, I would call that spiritual. Now, whether
Relic.
there's something actually supernatural attached to that, I feel that is a separate conversation.
Well, so
But
that's encompassed
the
by
interesting conversation.
yeah, and that's just encompassed by we have emotions. I don't like we all agree we have emotions. I don't know why like I need some other like spiritual baggage on top of it when the data can be explained without adding extra things on top of it. For me, like I don't want to have
It's not
more, but still, it's like even if we use the idea you said, it's like even if every person goes, we call that spiritual, they're just using some label to call something natural, which is fine. We're just using a different grunt than the other grunt that was previously associated with it, and that's fine. Like we could do that,
but I do feel that then it conceals like what a lot of people mean by spiritual, which is a claim about the supernatural. So if you say, oh, well, you know, when you go to your favorite gig and you feel like this cool feeling, that's spiritual, and then they'll be like, oh, okay, then I believe in spiritualism, and then you're like, wicked. That means ghosts exist, and you agree, or you know, that means that values are given to us by spirits or something like that, and that's not the case. Like, I absolutely accept, like Mike says, that I experience emotions at gigs. It's what I live to do.
yeah.
But I absolutely do not accept any claim about supernatural at all. So
Yeah, and these are based ad
right.
populum. These are, I mean, these are based on the amount of people, right? So words are going to have usages based on the amount of people that use them. And so whenever you decide, like, I'm going to kind of bastardize some term and use it differently, not saying you are, but you know, somebody does, you know, then that's going to be like, that will be a semantic battle. And it's also just going to be wrong in virtue of how we use words, which is the usage becomes prevalent once more people start using it. That's why like lit, you know, it's not just like lighting something on fire anymore. It's like the cool thing. That's
exactly.
Like, you know, right. And so that's fine with me. It's just grunts don't actually get to the phenomena at which actually exists or not. And if the phenomena at which you attribute to one grunt over the other is just to say spiritualism over naturalism or something like that, it's really just only separated by what sounds you grunted out of your mouth, and that's to me not very interesting. What's interesting is whether or not there's some real detectable phenomena there, which seems to just be the natural world.
But anyway, I think with that, I agree with what Mike's saying, and I think we're gonna have to wrap up, Relic. So thanks for your call. But yes, it's a good discussion, but I think yeah, I'm not convinced of the magic part, basically.